I never thought I'd find myself in this situation, but here I am, pouring my heart out to a group of strangers. My name is Mark, and I once thought I had the perfect life with my wife, Jessica. We met in college, bonded over late-night study sessions, and shared dreams of a future together. I thought we were solid. We had been married for 5 years, and honestly, I thought our relationship was as good as it gets. That was until everything started to unravel. I guess the signs were there if I had been looking closely enough. Jessica had always been a little distant, but I chalked it up to work stress. She was a successful marketing executive, and I understood that sometimes work could take a toll on someone. But then, things began to change rapidly. She started coming home late more often, citing meetings and client dinners. I tried to be supportive, but the nagging feeling that something was off wouldn't go away. One night, as I was scrolling through my phone, I saw a message notification pop up on Jessica's phone while she was taking a shower. It was from Dave, my best friend. From college, the message read, "Can't wait to see you tonight, just the two of us." My heart dropped and a wave of nausea washed over me. I should have ignored it. I should have trusted my wife and my best friend, but I didn't. The doubt gnawed at me and I knew I had to dig deeper. The next few days were torture. I paid attention to every little detail. Jessica's hair was a little different, her makeup was more pronounced, and she had new clothes that I didn't recognize. I even caught her smiling at her phone one evening and my stomach turned. I decided to confront her directly, but I needed more proof first. I went through her things, her purse, her laptop, anything I could find, and then I stumbled upon her secret. She kept a journal, and what I found inside confirmed my worst fears. There it was, written in her familiar handwriting. "I can't stop thinking about Dave. He makes me feel alive in a way that Mark doesn't." My heart shattered into a million pieces. I couldn't believe my own wife was having an affair with my best friend. I felt a mix of anger, betrayal, and deep sadness. The man I trusted the most had turned into a backstabber, and the woman I loved had chosen him over me. The confrontation happened that same night. When Jessica walked through the door, I was ready. She sensed something was off immediately. I confronted her with the journal, expecting her to crumble, to apologize, to show some sign of remorse. Instead, she laughed. "Mark, you're reading too much into this. It's just a stupid crush. You know how I get when I'm stressed." I felt my anger boil. "A crush? Are you serious? You're sleeping with my best friend." I shouted, my voice cracking. She tried to deny it, but the lies fell apart like a house of cards. Her excuses were weak, pathetic even. I was furious, but mostly I felt lost. I had loved this woman with every fiber of my being, and in return she had shattered my world. As the night wore on, I couldn't help but reflect on our relationship. The years we spent building a life together felt like a lie. I thought we were partners, but she had chosen betrayal. I felt humiliated and heartbroken. The emotional impact was crushing. I was angry, sad, but above all, I felt betrayed. I thought of all the moments we shared, the trust we had built, and it all felt meaningless now. I needed time to process everything. I couldn't just jump to a decision. It felt like my entire life had been upended in a matter of hours. I'd need to figure out what I wanted to do next. I had lost both a friend and a wife in one day. What was I supposed to do now? The next few days were surreal. I walked around in a daze, replaying the confrontation over and over in my mind like a broken record. I barely ate or slept, my thoughts consumed by the betrayal. I would see Jessica moving around the house, her presence a constant reminder of what had been lost. Each glance at her seemed to ignite a new wave of anger and hurt. The love I once felt for her had morphed into a painful knot in my stomach. I distanced myself from her, spending more time at work and avoiding conversations at home. I needed to think, to clear my head. I had always been the kind of guy who believed in loyalty and trust. I had stood by Jessica through thick and thin, and yet here she was, shattering that belief with a single choice. I felt like I was living in someone else's life, a reality that didn't make sense. One evening, I decided to reach out to my sister, Rachel. She had always been my confidant, and I knew she would listen without judgment. Over coffee, I finally opened up, telling her everything. As I recounted the events, Rachel's expression shifted from concern to disbelief. "Mark, are you sure about this? Maybe it's a misunderstanding, she suggested gently. I shook my head, feeling the weight of the journal in my pocket, a constant reminder of what I had seen. It's all there, Ratch. She doesn't care about me anymore. She's been lying to my face. I can't just ignore it. Rachel sighed, and I could tell she wanted to say something more, but she held back. What are you going to do? She finally asked. That was a question I had been avoiding. I wasn't sure I was ready to make any decisions, but I knew. I couldn't let things continue as they were. I had to confront the situation head-on. I needed to confront Jessica again, but this time I had to think strategically. I needed to know for certain just how deep this betrayal went. The following days were filled with a mix of dread and determination. I started gathering evidence, keeping my phone handy to document any messages or unusual behavior. I even reached out to a mutual friend to get some insight into Jessica and Dave's interactions. My world had shrunk to this singular focus, finding out the truth and figuring out my next move. Then one night, as I was scrolling through social media, I came across a photo that made my blood run cold. It was a picture of Jessica and Dave together, arms around each other, both beaming with smiles. It was taken just a few days after our confrontation. They looked so happy, so carefree, and it made my heart ache. I realized then that this wasn't just a fleeting affair. It was something deeper, something they were both enjoying without a care for the damage it would cause. I felt a raw anger burning within me. This was not just betrayal from my wife. It was a betrayal from someone I had considered a brother. I had trusted Dave with everything, and he had violated that trust in the worst way possible. The more I thought about it, the more I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, ready to jump into an abyss of revenge. But what would that look like? What would it achieve? I spent another sleepless night turning these thoughts over in my head. I realized I didn't want a messy confrontation. I wanted to be strategic. I needed to make them feel the weight of their actions. I toyed with the idea of exposing their affair to everyone we knew, letting the truth bleed out into the open. I wanted them to face the consequences of their choices. By the end of the week, I felt a sense of clarity washing over me. I had to get my life back, and that meant taking control of the narrative. I would confront Jessica and Dave together, armed with evidence. I wanted them both to see the pain they had caused, to understand that there were consequences for their actions. I wanted to turn the tables, to reclaim my power in this situation. After all, they had taken so much from me. It was time for them to understand what it felt like to lose something that mattered. The thought of revenge had settled in my heart, and with it came a sense of purpose. I was done being the victim. I was ready to fight back. The decision to confront Jessica and Dave together filled me with a strange mix of excitement and dread. I knew this was going to be one of the hardest things I'd ever done, but I was no longer willing to be a passive bystander in my own life. I spent the next few days preparing myself mentally. I wrote down everything I wanted to say, practicing in front of the mirror as if I were rehearsing for a play. I wanted to ensure that when the moment came, I would be calm and collected, but also firm and unwavering. I decided to invite both of them for a friendly dinner to discuss some recent developments. I hoped that by framing it this way, they wouldn't suspect anything. I knew Jessica would be curious, and Dave would feel the need to be supportive. I picked a date and sent out a group text to both of them, suggesting a place that was somewhat neutral. It wouldn't be a home turf advantage for either of them. The night of the dinner arrived, and I was a bundle of nerves. I arrived early to the restaurant, ordering a drink to calm my jangling nerves. As I waited, I observed the other diners and tried to distract myself, but my mind kept racing back to the confrontation that awaited me. I knew they would arrive together, which would make the whole thing feel even more surreal. When Jessica and Dave walked in, laughing and seemingly at ease, I felt a wave of anger wash over me. They were oblivious to the storm brewing just beneath the surface. I forced a smile as they approached and greeted them both with a casualness that belied the turmoil I felt inside. "Thanks for coming, guys," I said, gesturing to the reserved table. "I thought it'd be nice to catch up." We settled in, and I made small talk, playing the part of the gracious host while my heart raced. In my chest, I could see Jessica glancing at me, sensing something was off, but she didn't quite know what was coming. After a few minutes of light conversation, I cleared my throat, ready to shift gears. Actually, I wanted to talk about something important tonight, I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Jessica's smile faded and Dave's expression turned serious. I know about the affair, I said, locking eyes with both of them. The words hung in the air like a heavy fog, and for a moment the world around us faded away. Jessica's face flushed with surprise, and Dave shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "What are you talking about?" Jessica stammered, her voice rising an octave. "You must be mistaken, Mark. This isn't funny." "It's not a joke, Jess." I pulled out my phone and opened the message thread with the photos of them together. I laid the evidence on the table. "You don't get to deny this. It's all right here." I watched as the color drained from her face, and I could see the panic set in. "How could you do this?" "To me, to us." "I can explain," Dave interjected, his voice shaky. "Mark, it's not how it seems. It was just a mistake." I wanted to laugh at the absurdity of his excuse. A mistake, sleeping with your best friend's wife. That was no mistake, that was a choice. I turned my attention back to Jessica, who was visibly upset. "You really thought I wouldn't find out? How long has this been going on?" I demanded, my voice rising with each word. She hesitated, and in that moment of silence I saw the truth reflected in her eyes. She couldn't lie her way out of this one. "Mark, please, you have to understand, I felt so alone," she finally said, her voice quivering. "You were always busy with work and I didn't know how to reach you." It was a pathetic excuse, and I felt anger boil within me. "So you decided to sleep with my best friend. You thought that was the solution." The tension in the air was thick. Dave sat there, shifting uncomfortably, glancing between Jessica and me as if he were waiting for the ground to swallow him whole. "I didn't mean to hurt you, man. It just happened," he said, but his words were empty. I could feel the rage building inside me, pushing me closer to the edge. "I trusted you both," I spat, my voice low and dangerous. "You've both betrayed that trust. You think I'm just going to sit here and let this slide?" I paused, taking a breath to steady myself. "No, I'm not going to play the victim anymore. You both need to understand the consequences of your actions." Jessica looked at me with tears in her eyes, but I couldn't muster any sympathy. The hurt was too deep. "I want you both to feel the weight of this," I continued, my heart racing. "I'll make sure everyone knows what you've done. You've shattered my world, and I won't let you get away with it." The expressions on their faces were a mixture of shock and fear, and I took a moment to savor that feeling. For once, I felt in control. I was no longer the victim. I was taking back my power, and I wanted them both to know it. The dinner had transformed from a casual catch-up to a reckoning, and I was ready to fight for my dignity. "Consider this your warning," I said, my voice steady. "I will not quietly walk away from this. You both have made your choices, and now it's time to face the music." The weight of my words hung heavy in the air, and I knew there was no turning back from this moment. Whatever happened next was in their hands. The aftermath of the confrontation was surreal. I left the restaurant feeling a mix of exhilaration and confusion. I had finally confronted Jessica and Dave, and while it felt good to lay everything out on the table, I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. I drove home in a daze, replaying the scene over and over in my mind, wondering if I had done the right thing. Part of me felt empowered, but another part was terrified of the repercussions. When I got home, the silence was deafening. I had kicked the hornet's nest, and now I was left to deal with the fallout. I turned on the TV and tried to distract myself, but nothing could shake the feeling of betrayal that clung to me like a shadow. I spent the night tossing and turning, the weight of my decision resting heavily on my chest. The next morning, I woke up to a flurry of messages on my phone. Jessica had texted me several times, pleading for a chance to talk, to explain. I ignored her. Part of me wanted to respond, to hear her side, but I knew that whatever she had to say wouldn't change the facts. I had no interest in hearing excuses or apologies. Meanwhile, I had also received messages from Dave. He started by trying to justify what had happened, claiming that it was a lapse in judgment and that he never intended to hurt me. I found myself gritting my teeth as I read his messages. How could he think I would buy into his pathetic excuses? I wanted to respond, to unleash my fury onto him, but I decided that silence was the best answer. I didn't need to engage in a conversation that would only bring more pain. As the day wore on, I finally decided I needed to talk to Rachel again. I needed someone to help ground me, someone who could remind me of my worth. When I called her, she picked up immediately, sensing the urgency in my voice. I met her at a coffee shop later that afternoon. "Mark, what happened? You look like a ghost," she said, concern etched on her face. I recounted the events of the previous night, and with each word I felt the weight of my pain spill out. I confronted them. I told them I wouldn't let them get away with this. But now I don't know what to do next. Rachel listened intently, her expression sympathetic. "You did what you needed to do, Mark. You stood up for yourself, but what's your plan now?" I shrugged, feeling lost. "I don't know. Part of me wants to expose them, to tell everyone what they've done, but I also don't want to drag this out longer than it needs to be." Rachel nodded. "That's understandable, but you need to think about what's best for you. They made their choices. You don't owe them anything. If you want to walk away, then do it. If you want to fight back, then do that. Just make sure you're doing what feels right for you." Her words resonated with me. I needed to focus on my healing and what would make me feel whole again. I didn't want to spend my life wallowing in anger or revenge. I wanted to move on, but the thought of letting them get away with their betrayal gnawed at me. That evening, I received another message from Jessica. It was a long, desperate plea, filled with apologies and promises to change. She wrote about how lonely she had been and how she regretted her choices. My heart ached as I read her words, but I quickly pushed the feeling aside. I couldn't allow her to manipulate my emotions. I decided to call her. When she picked up, I could hear the tremor in her voice. "Mark, please, I'm so sorry. I've made a terrible mistake. I never wanted to hurt you." "Then why did you?" I shot back, my voice cold. "You had every opportunity to stop this, Jess. You chose to continue to deceive me." "I know, and I hate myself for it," she replied, her voice breaking. "But it was a moment of weakness. I thought I could handle it, that it was just a fling. I never meant for it to become this." "Never meant for it to become this," I echoed, incredulous. "You think that makes it any better? You don't get to decide what this was. You shattered our marriage, and for what? A moment of fun with my best friend. That's not a mistake, that's a choice." "I regret it, I truly do. Just give me a chance to explain, to fix this," she pleaded. I took a deep breath, trying to control my emotions. "Fix this? You can't just wave a magic wand and make it disappear, Jessica. This is real. We can't just go back to the way things were. Trust is broken. Please, Mark," she continued, desperation creeping into her voice. "I'll do anything, just give me a chance." I felt a pang of sympathy for her, but it was quickly drowned out by the anger and hurt I felt. "You had your chance. You made your choices, and now you have to deal with the consequences." As I hung up, I felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. I had set my boundaries, and for once I felt a sense of closure. I knew I wouldn't be able to fix what was broken, but I felt like I was finally taking control of my life. Whatever happened next, I was ready to face it head on. I was done being a victim. I was reclaiming my narrative. But deep down, I knew the road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges. I could feel the hurt still clinging to me, but I was determined to move forward, one step at a time. I was ready to embrace the journey of healing, no matter how painful it might be. Little did I know that the path ahead would bring even more unexpected twists and turns. After my confrontation with Jessica, things began to spiral in ways I hadn't anticipated. I thought I had gained some semblance of control, but the reality was that the emotional fallout continued to invade every aspect of my life. I found myself constantly on edge, reliving the betrayal during the quiet moments and wrestling with the anger that seemed to bubble just below the surface. The days that followed were filled with messages from Jessica. She was relentless, sending long texts filled with apologies, explanations, and promises of change. I eventually decided to block her number, realizing that I needed space to think clearly. The emotional weight of her words was too much for me to bear. I couldn't let her manipulate my feelings any longer. At work, I tried to focus, but my mind was often elsewhere. My colleagues noticed that something was off. I had become quieter, less engaged in conversations, and I could feel their concern. One of my coworkers, Lisa, who I had always been friendly with, finally confronted me. "Mark, you've seemed really out of it lately. Is everything okay?" I hesitated, unsure whether to share my personal turmoil, but the weight of my situation felt too heavy to carry alone. "Not really, Lisa. I'm going through a rough patch in my marriage," I confessed, feeling a mix of relief and vulnerability. "What happened?" she asked gently, and I found myself recounting the entire story. As I spoke, I saw the concern deepen in her eyes, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of camaraderie. "I'm so sorry, Mark. That sounds incredibly painful. You don't deserve that kind of betrayal," she said. Her empathy felt like a balm to my wounded heart, and I appreciated her kindness. As the week progressed, I realized that I needed to focus on my own healing rather than remaining stuck in the cycle of anger and betrayal. I decided to see a therapist, which had been recommended by a friend. Meeting with someone outside of my immediate circle felt like a necessary step. I wanted to gain clarity about my feelings and how to move forward. Therapy, I was able to unpack the layers of hurt and betrayal. My therapist encouraged me to express my emotions rather than bury them. "It's okay to be angry, Mark. You've been hurt deeply and your feelings are valid," she said. I found comfort in knowing that I wasn't alone and that my emotions were a natural response to such a profound betrayal. Through our sessions, I came to realize that while Jessica and Dave had caused me immense pain, I didn't want to let their choices dictate my happiness. I began to reflect on what I truly wanted for my future. Did I want to fight for my marriage, or was it time to cut my losses and move on? The answer wasn't clear, but I knew I needed to take my time and make a decision that was rooted in my own well-being. A turning point came when I decided to take a weekend trip to a nearby cabin, a place I had visited before that always brought me peace. I needed to escape the chaos and find some clarity. The fresh air, the solitude, and the beauty of nature helped me reconnect with myself. I spent hours hiking, contemplating, and allowing my mind to wander free of the burdens I had been carrying. It was during one of these hikes that I finally felt a sense of resolution wash over me. I sat on a rock overlooking a serene lake, and for the first time in weeks, I was able to breathe deeply without feeling suffocated by anger and betrayal. I realized that I didn't need revenge to feel empowered. What I needed was to reclaim my life and my happiness on my own terms. I decided to write Jessica a letter, not to lash out or seek revenge, but to express my thoughts and feelings clearly. I detailed the hurt her actions had caused and how it had shattered my trust in her. I also shared my decision to move forward with my life, regardless of whether she wanted to try and salvage our marriage. I explained that I needed distance and time to heal, and that I would appreciate it if she respected my wishes. After writing the letter, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I didn't need to harbor anger or seek revenge. I needed to focus on my own healing. I realized that my worth wasn't tied to my relationship with Jessica, nor was it defined by the betrayal I experienced. Upon returning home, I delivered the letter to her in person. I found her at a local coffee shop and we sat down together. Her eyes were filled with tears as she read my words. "I'm so sorry, Mark," she said, her voice breaking. "I know you are, Jess, but this isn't something we can just fix with apologies," I replied, my voice steady. "I need time to figure things out. I'm not saying I want to end things completely, but I can't go back to how things were." She nodded, the weight of the situation hanging between us. "I understand. I'll give you space," she said, her voice soft. As I left the coffee shop, I felt a mix of sadness and relief. I had taken a step towards reclaiming my life, and I felt proud of myself for standing firm in my decisions. I knew that healing would take time, and I was prepared for the journey ahead. In the days following, I focused on myself, picking up hobbies I had neglected, spending time with friends, and rediscovering passions that brought me joy. I started to feel like myself again, slowly rebuilding my life one piece at a time. While I was still processing the betrayal, I also realized that I had gained a valuable lesson through this experience, that I was stronger than I had ever given myself credit for. I didn't have to carry the burden of someone else's choices. I had the power to define my own future, and for the first time in a long time I felt hopeful. I was ready to embrace whatever came next. But just when I thought I was finally on the right track, life had one more surprise in store for me. Just as I began to feel like I was regaining my footing, unexpected events took another turn. One evening I was sitting at home, engrossed in a book, when my phone buzzed. I glanced at it, and to my shock it was a message from Dave. I had intentionally cut off contact with him, thinking it was best for my healing. But there he was, reaching out again. "Hey Mark, can we talk? I really need to explain some things," the message read. My initial reaction was anger. How dare he think he could just waltz back into my life after everything that had happened? But a part of me was curious. What could he possibly say that would change anything? After a moment of deliberation, I decided to respond. "What's there to talk about, Dave? You've already made your choices clear." He replied almost instantly. "I know, and I regret it. I messed up badly, and I want to apologize. I just think you deserve to hear my side before you make any decisions about the future." I stared at my phone, torn. Part of me wanted to tell him to go to hell, to cut all ties and move on with my life. But another part of me felt that I needed closure, that hearing him out might help me find that final piece of healing. I ultimately agreed to meet him at a local bar, a neutral place where things could be kept civil. When I arrived, I spotted Dave sitting at a table, looking nervous and out of place. He looked like a shadow of the confident man I had once known. As I approached, I could see the guilt etched across his features. "Thanks for meeting me, Mark," he said, his voice low. I took a seat across from him, ready to hear what he had to say. "Just get to it, Dave. What do you want?" He sighed deeply, running a hand through his hair. "I know I messed up. I never meant for things to turn out like this. It was a stupid decision, a moment of weakness, one that I've regretted every day since." "I don't want to hear excuses," I interrupted, my anger bubbling to the surface again. "You made a conscious choice to betray me. You could have stopped at any point. But you didn't, and then you continued to betray me by lying about it." "I know," he said, looking down at his drink. "You're right. I'm not trying to excuse my actions. I just wanted you to know how sorry I am. I lost my best friend over something so foolish, and I'm ashamed of myself." I studied him, searching for sincerity. "You don't get to come back into my life and expect forgiveness just because you're feeling guilty now. What you did, what both of you did, was a betrayal that goes beyond friendship." Dave nodded, his eyes filled with regret. "I understand that. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted to take responsibility for my actions and tell you I'm truly sorry. I never meant to hurt you." His admission hung in the air between us, a fragile acknowledgement of the pain he had caused. "I appreciate you saying that, but it doesn't change what happened. I need to focus on my own healing now. I don't think we can go back to how things were between us." "I get it, and I'll respect your decision," he replied quietly. "I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. You deserve so much better than what I've done." We sat in silence for a moment, both of us lost in our thoughts. I realized that there was a strange sense of closure in this conversation. I hadn't expected to feel this way, but hearing him admit his wrongs made me feel a little lighter. I wasn't ready to forgive him, and I didn't know if I ever would be, but I could finally see a path towards moving on. As we wrapped up, I told him that I needed time and space away from our friendship. He nodded, understanding. We parted ways with a sense of finality, and I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. In the weeks that followed, I continued to heal. I focused on finding joy in the little things, spending time with friends, exploring new interests, and rediscovering my sense of self. I started going to the gym regularly, immersing myself in physical activity that helped me channel my emotions into something positive. I also found myself growing closer to Lisa, my coworker who had shown me kindness during my toughest moments. We began to spend more time together outside of work, sharing laughter and stories that made me forget, if only for a moment, the pain of my past. It felt nice to connect with someone on a different level, and I found myself looking forward to our time together. Eventually, I decided to reach out to Jessica one last time, just to let her know where I stood. I sent her a message explaining that I needed space and that pursuing our relationship wasn't something I wanted at this point. I wished her the best but made it clear that it was time for me to move on. When Jessica responded, there was a sense of acceptance in her words. She thanked me for being honest and expressed her hope that I would find happiness. I felt a bittersweet sense of closure, knowing that I was finally ready to turn the page. Looking back, I realized that this experience had fundamentally changed me. I learned about resilience, about the importance of self-worth, and about the strength it takes to reclaim one's life after betrayal. I understood now that I held the power to define my future, and that I didn't need someone else's actions to dictate my happiness. As I moved into this new chapter of my life, I embraced the uncertainty that came with it. I knew there would be challenges ahead, but I also knew I was strong enough to face them. I had learned to trust myself again, and that, in itself, was a victory. The road ahead might be rocky, but I was ready to walk it with my head held high, knowing that I had emerged from the darkness and into the light.